Hello, everyone, and welcome to our sixth and final session in American English Live Series 23. We're so excited that each of you are here with us. My name is Elena, and I'll be with you today along with my colleague behind the scenes, Javid, who will be the moderator, helping answer your questions and responding to your comments during the session. We wanted to let you know that today's session will be recorded and shared across various platforms. By attending and adding your comments to the chat section during today's webinar, your first name, country, and/or comment may be included in the video recording. By participating, you consent to your appearance in the recording and its use for the purposes related to the work or business of FHI 360 and the U.S. Department of State. If you do not want to appear in the recording, please do not share any comments in the chat box during the live webinar. Throughout Series 23, we have been exploring a variety of topics in classroom management. We hope you're able to use the practical ideas we share. And here's what to expect today. The session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present the material, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. Please share your thoughts using the chat box today. And now for today's webinar, All's Well That Begins Well, starting courses on the path to engagement and success. The beginning of a course is a great opportunity for instructors to set the tone for the term and motivate students to participate and engage. In this interactive session, participants will discover techniques for reaching out to students before the course begins to build interest and lay the foundation for success, creating classroom community from day one, and establishing routines for classroom management that promote student autonomy and learning mindsets. We'll also discuss alternatives for low resource contexts and adaptations for both small and large classes. And we are pleased to introduce our presenter, Dr. Christopher Stillwell. Chris has worked as a teacher educator in Japan, Peru, and Laos, and he has taught ESL and EFL in Spain, Japan, and the United States. As a U.S. Department of State English language specialist, he has worked on projects in Egypt, Brazil, and Mexico, and he has presented 4 other American English Live webinars. Chris has taught at Teachers College Columbia University and University of California, Irvine. At Saddleback College, he teaches ESL and facilitates professional development. His areas of expertise include English as a medium of instruction, TESOL certificate instruction, and using artificial intelligence to support instruction. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Elena. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This is a topic I love to talk about. And because it's about beginning well, let's get off to a great start, shall we? In this session, we will explore ways to prepare students before the first day, build community, set expectations, and establish routines. Now today, when we talk about beginning a course, what are we referring to? We're talking about the start of a semester or a term or a school year. We are not talking about the daily start of a class. Now, for part 1, we'll talk about preparing students before the first day. And we can think about it in a few different ways. But first, I'd like to hear from you. How can instructors put class on a good path before it even begins? And Elena, while we're hearing some answers from our participants, what are your thoughts about this? What makes it important?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Chris. I think the start of a class is a really great opportunity to set the tone for the term. I think supportive and friendly communication before the first day or on the first day can really make a big difference and show students that as the teacher, I'm engaged and I really care about their success. And I think that just helps students feel encouraged and really can carry through a positive experience throughout the term. So
Nice.
audience,
Absolutely.
let us know. Yeah. Let us know what you think instructors can do to put the course on a good path before the term even begins. And we do have some comments coming in already from our audience. Let's see here. So Mateo says that for his online classes, he'll test platforms and share some simple tech guidelines with students before the class starts. Let's see, Carlos says that he likes to learn more about their expectations for the course, so he'll send them a survey or some questions to answer. Amina says that she likes to share a welcome video with her students so they can get to know a little bit about her before the course starts. Let's see here. May says that it's really important to start by creating a warm and friendly message with the class. Let's see, we'll take a couple more comments here. Fatima says that she lets students know what support is available and how they can reach out if they need help. Nora says that sometimes she'll offer a pre-course activity, something short related to the course topic. And let's see, we'll take one more comment here from Sakura, who says, I create a welcoming environment by sending a friendly message or a video in advance. What do you think about those ideas,
Wow.
Chris?
Now, these are great. I'm kind of intimidated because I hear such great ideas. I feel like maybe you guys can give this presentation, but I really appreciate everybody, Mateo and Carlos, all these great ideas about using a video, maybe a pre-course activity, friendly messages, all these things. Amina, May, Fatima, thank you. Those were really, you're giving us a great start for this workshop today. So I'd like to talk about pre-class communication in 3 areas. The first one is welcome messages that show your enthusiasm and your approachability. The second is key course information that raises interest. And third, questions that gather useful information about students. Now, there are many ways to reach out to students. We can take a low-tech approach and host an information session, or we can distribute simple flyers with key information. Personally, I like email, but I know many of my students prefer sending and receiving texts on their phones. So if my course is not too large, I often start with a welcome text and a link to essential course information. Now, your welcome message can tell students what to expect on day 1, and it can try to address any questions you know that they will have. You can also include a link to a website with more information. If you are using a course management system, and if the students are already able to go there, you can give them that link, of course. Or you could make a simple website, something like the free Google site that you see here. In your communication, can answer students' questions about things like the location of your class, your book, and more. Now, it's great if you can also provide a video to introduce yourself, or a picture and some personal text. If you do, share your enthusiasm, be friendly, and keep it short. Students may be intimidated about talking to a professor, so it's important to show them that you're not scary. Be human and not perfect. Put yourself in one of your everyday environments and show them that you're a regular person just like them. So they don't need to be afraid to come talk to you. Now, when you communicate before the term begins, you can also ask your future students to answer some questions in an online survey or in a direct reply to you. The questions could be about things like their preferred first name, their interests, and why they're taking the course. Knowing these answers before your class begins helps you start personalizing your course to match their needs and interests. I have 2 favorite questions that I like to ask at the start of a class. The first one is, how are you feeling about this class? Use 1 word. I can then feed those responses into a kind of a word cloud generator, which is free online. And I get a picture that visually represents the responses with the most popular responses in a larger font. Or I can simply give a simple verbal summary of the common and interesting responses when I see my students. But this gives us something to talk about on the first day of class. and it helps us get a sense of how everyone is feeling. Now, the second great question is, what is the one thing that could stop your success in this class? This helps me think of ways to support students with different needs, and I can revisit this information if I find that a student is falling behind. Now, let's talk about the first day or week of class. Once we're all together, we can focus on building community. And again, I have a question for all of you. Let's hear from you. Why is it important to build community in a large class? And Elena, can you remember any classes you attended as a student where there was a strong sense of community? How did that impact your experience of the class?
Yeah, what a great question, Chris. Thinking back on my experience, two courses stand out. I think the first one, it was a very small class. There were only 6 or 7 of us, and we met regularly and worked in pairs or groups almost every session. And so we really felt like everyone's voice mattered, and we had a lot of trust. So that made it easier, I think, and more natural to really participate. The second class I'm thinking about was much larger, but we were assigned to teams that stayed together the whole semester. And I think having that consistent group made us have a real sense of accountability and support. And so it just felt like I had a good community there to support me throughout the semester. So those are the ones that stand out for me.
Yeah, you're sharing how even in a large class, if you can have those smaller groups, you can feel community and connection to some other members of the class.
Exactly. That's a great way to summarize it. All right, audience, and let us know, why do you think it's important to build community in a language class? We do have some great comments coming in already from our participants. So let's see. Luca said that I think language learning is social, and so it needs interaction. Great point. Isabella says that it can help create a positive learning environment. Ahmed said, I believe that students feel safer making mistakes, and having community will make the process easier for students. Thanks for sharing that, Ahmed. Let's see here. Chloe says that building a community can encourage more speaking practice among students. Ravi is saying that in a community, you can learn from each other's ideas and also their mistakes and experiences. Great. Mina says that it can make the class more fun and less stressful. And George thinks that it'll build peer support that can also help with motivation. Great ideas, everybody. We'll take just a couple more here. Let's see. Nina says that using shared projects and just having a sense of community overall can help students build trust and help them work better together when they're doing group work. And one more here. Lena says that she likes to build community through doing lots of group chats or forums each week. Thanks for sharing those ideas, everybody.
Wow, I love that. Yeah. So Mina and Lena and Ahmed, and Chloe, so many great ideas there. I totally agree that learning a language is social. We want students to be comfortable making mistakes, and we can learn from each other. There's so many things to talk about. So I'll share a couple other things that complement these ideas. When I think of building community, 2 things stand out as extra important. The first one is learning names, and the second is getting to know one another. Now, why should we learn students' names? Well, maybe you've noticed that so far, I'm trying to remember the names of people who participate here. Why? Because names are important. It's been said that to a person, their name is the sweetest sound there is. Knowing names is a crucial way to show people that we know who they are and that they matter to us. When we do not know a student's name, they may feel invisible, like it doesn't matter to us if they come to class or not. And of course, knowing names is essential for getting individual students' attention when we need to for classroom management. Now, I've been talking about reasons that a teacher should learn students' names, but what about the students themselves? What are some benefits if they know each other's names? Here's a question. If you could only pick one reason why it's good when students learn names, what would it be? We've got 4 choices for you to think about here. The first one is to have better group work. Second is to make everyone feel they belong, or to have better class discussions, or maybe to help students make friends. So please make your choice and keep it in mind as we go forward. And so going forward, we're going to talk about 3 things we can do to help everyone learn names: group pictures, name games, and quizzes. First, we can get a group picture. Everyone holds a piece of paper with their name on it. And this will give us something to study later. Next, take a photo, a second photo, where you hold the same paper, but you turn it around so that you're holding it backwards. And now it's a blank page. This image, will be good for testing yourself later. And about that test, well, yeah, for the class, we can also make a test. And perhaps it will be for extra credits down the road to help students have more incentive to learn and see their progress. We can also help everyone learn names by playing some games with those name cards. We can have everyone stand in a circle, holding their name cards. They can take turns introducing themselves and teaching the pronunciation of their names. And we can give a few minutes for everyone to study, and then after that, we can have everyone put their name cards behind their backs, put them away, and then students in pairs try to remember all the other names in the circle, and they help each other. Next, we can split the class into smaller circles where students toss a ball to each other. Maybe it's a ball made from those papers. We crumple them together and make a ball. And when they toss the ball to each other, they call out the name of whoever they're throwing to. So you can mix into different circles and try again to get more practice with different names. And finally, you can bring the whole group back together again for one big ball tossing and name remembering activity. It's a lot of fun. But finally, when students return to their seats, they can do a simple self-quiz on a piece of paper. You can say something like, write down the names of all your classmates. And it's a challenge. How many can you remember? And maybe when you check in with students, you ask them, how many did you get? And they just tell you a number. And when you finish, check your answers with someone near you, right? Students can talk to each other and help each other remember more names together. Now, I can share some additional help for learning names as well. We can revisit both photos before class. We can get students to change their seating locations so that we get more of a challenge. And in large classes, we can learn the names of the class discussion contributors and have students work in smaller groups, kind of like what you said, Elena, in your experience. We can also establish a routine for welcoming newcomers because we want them to feel like a part of the class and we want to know their names as well. So we can have this routine where we welcome them with warm greetings and asking basic questions for meeting someone, like, what's your name and where are you from? We can also build community by helping students get to know each other better. And this can start with simple self-introductions and mindful listening. Each student gets maybe 30 seconds to tell the whole class about themselves, but they're only going to share 3 things. They'll share their name, where they're from, and one thing we would not be able to guess about them. For example, a student might say, my name is Subin, I have a 1-year-old son, and I'm from Korea, and I love to talk about experiences in other countries. Now, while the students are introducing themselves to the class, we also want to begin having good listening routines. So the rest of the class is not falling asleep or preparing their presentation. No, the rest of the class can take notes. They can write the classmate's name, Subin, and they can write that she has a 1-year-old son and she likes to talk about travel. And next, they can think of a question or a comment like, does your son speak 2 languages? Or what countries did you visit? And these notes and these questions will help them because in the next step, students will stand in 2 circles facing each other in something called a speed date or a partner rotation. And you'll see they talk for 2 minutes, and then the people on the outside of the circle move to a new partner and start again. course, while they talk, they can refer to the notes they took during the introductions, and they can remember what they heard and the questions that they wrote for themselves to ask. Now, we can also use that same speed dating partner rotation format for other activities to help students mingle and get to know one another while speaking English throughout the term. One variation is for students to bring in meaningful pictures and objects to talk about with their peers, as in this example of an About Me page. Students can put together some pictures for discussion, including a picture of their family, their favorite places, their favorite food, their hobby, things like that. All right. Now that we've covered how to prepare students for the first day and how to build community, let's focus on how to set expectations for the rest of the term. I think the start of a term is a time to help students understand what's coming. We establish rules and routines that will help us have a successful class. Well, let's go back to you, everybody. In the chat, how do you approach classroom rules for your classes? And Elena, what are some rules that you like to make sure that students know about right from the beginning of your class? One of my favorite rules is that students should make sure that they get something valuable from every class, and they should make sure that their classmates get something valuable from every class too. What about you?
I love that rule, Chris. I think that's such a good one, and I might have to take it from you and use it in my own classes in the future. I think at the beginning of a course, what I like to do is set the expectation that learning is really a shared effort and that we're all responsible for helping the class go well. So I let students know that one way this happens is by asking questions, and that it's so much better for them to ask rather than sit there and feel lost. And that usually if someone is confused about something, they have peers that are also confused. So asking the question will help the whole class community.
Nice.
One other
I like
rule.
to do something. Sorry, you made me think. Sometimes it's good to give students that language right at the beginning, right? Well, how do you ask a question? How do you ask for clarification? How do you express that something is you didn't understand something? Yeah.
Yep, that's a great point. I love that idea. One other rule that I thought of is that about communication and letting them know that they should really reach out if something in their life makes it hard to keep up within the course. I work mostly
Right.
with adults, and so I really want them to know that, you know, I care and that they can always contact me and we can find a solution together. So those are a few things that I like to do at the beginning of a term.
Wonderful.
Awesome. And let's hear from you, audience. So how do you approach classroom rules in your classes? Let us know. And let's see. So Maria says, I like to create rules with my students. I think it helps them feel some ownership of the rules. Ahmed says, I keep my rules simple and focus mostly on respect and participation. Priya says, I try to explain the why behind each rule. My students are more likely to follow the rules when they understand why it's a rule. Sophia is saying that she normally starts with a discussion on why rules matter for learning. So a similar thought there as Priya. Let's see, Jean says they use clear, easy to understand language and also visual aids sometimes to help students understand the rules, especially for things like respect and participation and punctuality. Thanks for sharing that. Let's see, I'll take a couple more comments here. We have a lot of great responses coming in. Liam says, I try to use positive phrasing like do instead of don't in my rules. Priya says that they introduce rules gradually as situations arise throughout the term. Jonas likes to post their rules in the classroom. Elena says that she works with adults as well and likes to connect rules to professional expectations to help make that connection for her students. And then just a couple other comments that I wanted to read out. Aya says that she struggles with enforcing rules consistently in online classes. So hopefully she'll get some good ideas here. And let's see, Sarah said that involving students in the rulemaking process has been really beneficial for her classroom. So that's a great idea. All right. Thanks
Wow.
everybody so much for sharing these great responses. Back over to you,
Yeah,
Chris.
that's really something. Yeah, and I'd like to comment on, Aya, you said you struggle with the rules sometimes, and I think we all do. I think it was maybe, was it Jonas or Jean? I think Jean said posting the rules in the classroom can be nice to have that as a reference. And if you're in an online class, maybe you can have that the rules prominently somewhere on your class webpage. Priya mentioned explaining the why, and I think that's really important. Nowadays, we're concerned about students using AI too much sometimes to solve their problems if a assignment is difficult. But if they know why we don't want them to use AI, if we get their buy-in, sometimes that can help us to have students follow our rules. So many great things. I could talk about this for the rest of our session, but I guess I'll go to my prepared slides here. So let's see. I want to start by talking about how many teachers like to put their rules in an official course document. It can be a course outline, or some people use a syllabus, which is a little bit more thorough perhaps, but just putting your rules there, it's not enough. See, students might not actually read this document, and they might not learn the class rules. A teacher once tested this with their class. In the middle of his syllabus, he wrote a secret message. The message explained how to get $50 from a locked box at the post office. He thought that if a student read the whole syllabus, they would find the message and get the money. But at the end of the term, the $50 was still there. No one had read the syllabus all the way. That's a true story. So instead of simply expecting students to read and be good people who internalize everything we tell them, we can turn this into an assignment, kind of like a quiz, or even better, we can have a hunt for essential information. We can do this in an online discussion board, as you see here, or in a classroom, we can cut up our syllabus into pieces, and we can put those pieces around the room. And then we can give students a list of questions about essential information for our class, as you see here. Students then go around the room on a hunt to find the answers. In my case, I asked students to find answers to questions like, how can you contact me with questions? What's the policy about AI? And what is your favorite class rule? And that's a way of getting some student buy-in, as I heard others, as we talked about before, on these rules, even if they're my rules, maybe getting students to share which ones they like gets some buy-in as well. But maybe the best thing, and I heard this from one of you just a few minutes ago, is if you can get the students to help you make the rules together. When you do that, the students find the rules more meaningful, and they're more invested in following them. In this example, the students said they wanted to be in a class that has active participation, where everyone would be present and speak up. And you can imagine when the students make these rules together, there's more of a sense of community. And this is something we're going to try to do together. We're going to agree on this. Now, the last thing I'll share in this part is that another really good way to set expectations is to take a moment on the first day of class for students to write important deadlines and exam dates into their calendars. And now we come to our final way to starting courses on the path to engagement and success, establishing routines. Again, I want to hear from all of you with your great ideas. So what do you think? What routines are most important to establish from the start? And Elena, when you think of the start of a term, do you think about setting routines? Why is it important to set routines right at the start?
What a great question. I'll be honest, Chris, when I was in my first few years of teaching, I really didn't think much at the start of a course about routines. I just more so built routines as the term went along. But now, more recently, I do really see how important it is to think about routines at the beginning. And I consider that when I'm planning a course, but also each lesson. I think I've seen that routines can really help my students feel more stability and know what to expect. And for me as the teacher, I also find them really beneficial. Having a consistent way to start and end the class, it really helps me manage my time better and also kind of model organization for students. So it's definitely something I think about now, but not necessarily in my first few years of teaching.
I think that's true. There are so many things that we get better as we get more experience. And that's what makes teaching exciting, actually, is in the earliest days, we don't really know how to do things. And we acquire these skills, and it starts to feel like a superpower sometimes, that things that were so difficult before become more, yeah, easier. And I think setting these routines at the start is one of the secrets.
I love that idea of it being a superpower. Thanks for sharing. All right, audience, and it looks like you have a lot of wonderful responses coming into this question about what routines you think are the most important to establish from the start. So Chris, I'm just going to read out a few of those
Right.
right now. So let's see. Omar says, in my opinion, having regular check-ins or reflection points for students is really important. Aya says that getting into a routine of sharing clear deadlines and reminders is important. Ben says that they teach courses mostly focused on speaking, and so they routinely set participation expectations for students. Samuel likes to regularly begin classes with a warm-up activity and end with some sort of exit or reflection. Tomas says that they mostly teach online, and so they like to do a quick tech check at the start of courses just to make sure students feel comfortable. Let's see, we'll take a couple more here. Kaito says, I believe that understanding where to find materials is really important. So maybe building some routines, helping students find the important information in the course. Maria says that the most important routine for her students is getting feedback. So maybe giving it in a consistent way and at consistent intervals. And we'll take, I just wanted to share a couple other comments we have. So May says that routines help her students feel more confident in the class. So I think she agrees that they're really important. And Layla says that they like to do routines, simple routines like greetings and other small rituals in language classes as a way to help students feel connected and participate in the class. Thanks so much for sharing, everybody.
Yeah, Layla and May, those kind of rituals, the helping students feel confident about the class, that's a really nice way to think of it. And I also like the comments I heard about how or something that we do. Yeah, these ideas of how do we begin a class in a good way. So I heard great ideas from Aya and Ben and Samuel, Tomas, everybody. Thank you so much. That's really great. And you're going to hear some similar ideas from me, but maybe with some other details or some adjustments. So let's take a look. Now, as we talk about routines, I'm going to focus on getting ready to learn and nurturing community. And for getting ready to learn, I want to think about starting on time first, because if we start right away, as the teacher, we begin class right on time, we tell the class that coming to class on time and being ready to begin are valued, and that everyone's time in this class will be used well. This can be especially important when you're working with adults who maybe have more choice in deciding when they arrive to your class. Now, perceptions of time are different across cultures, so you have to decide what makes sense where you're teaching. But here in California, that's what works for me. We can also use a corner of the board to prepare a good start. For instance, keeping the objectives up there in some kind of like students will be able to something with a measurable verb. Well, that can mentally prepare students for what's coming. For example, as you see, students will be able to use context clues to determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. And it helps as a reference throughout the class. Sometimes those learning objectives can sound a bit technical, though. So an alternative is to frame the objective as an interesting question that we are seeking the answer to, such as, how can the words around a new word help us figure out the meaning? We can also get students interested and ready to learn with an intriguing do now activity. As soon as students enter the room, they see an initial task to take on. For instance, if I know that I want to review how to make questions in today's class, I could put up a picture and ask them to make 3 questions about it. Elena, if you came to my class and you saw these instructions, what would you say?
Well, um, looking at the picture, I'd probably start with something simple like, who are the people on the escalator and what is that person at the top holding in their hand? Um, Also, I noticed the woman on the right. I think she looks very serious or maybe worried. So I might ask what she's thinking about or maybe where she's going.
That's great. Thank you, Elena. And so this is a great example of how maybe you came to my class, you looked at the screen and you saw it says, write 3 questions about this picture, use WH words, and you did that. And so there are many advantages to beginning this way. One thing is that it makes efficient use of time. It gets students started learning right away. And the teacher can use this time to do things like taking attendance and helping students get settled, dealing with any special concerns at the beginning. It also activates prior knowledge. It sort of helps students remember things that they already know and that they need to remember for today's class. It can prepare students for the lesson, and it shows what students remember and understand. So I think I covered all those. Now, a do now does not always have to be about things like grammar or vocabulary or whatever the class content is. It can also focus, again, on building community. Like we can have a refresher quiz on the classmates' names. And throughout the term, we can keep helping students get to know each other. We can routinely mix students into new groups. And when they work in groups, we can start with icebreaker questions. Now, sometimes we can ask students to form new groups on their own, but that can be chaotic. At the beginning of a term, I like to set a routine for mixing students into new groups, and it involves setting clear expectations, and it involves counting. Let's say, for example, I have a class of 24 students, and I want to divide the class into 4 groups. Well, we can go to each student and assign them a number, 1 to 4. So I just go through the class and I point at each student and I say the numbers. And then after students understand the routine, I start pointing at students and they tell me the number. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now all the students have been given a number, but you know what? I went through 24 students and maybe some students forgot. So I want to make sure we all got it. So I ask the ones, please raise your hands. And if anybody forgot their number, they get help from their neighbors. And then I tell them where they will be moving to. Don't move yet, but in a moment, you're going to go up here to the front of the room on the left. And then I do the same thing for the 2s. I get the 2s to raise their hands. We help anybody who forgot their number. And then I tell them that you're going to be moving to the back of the class on the left. After that, we do the same thing with the 3s. 3s, raise your hand. Okay, great. 3s, you're all going to be moving to the front right part of the class over here. Yep, okay. Wait a minute. Don't go yet. All right, and 4s, please raise your hand. All right, great. 4s, where do you think you're going? That's right, 4s. 4s, you're going to the back right of the class. Okay, and now no one has moved, but everybody remembers their number. More importantly, they know where they're going now. And then, once we're sure about that, we can invite everyone to move to their new groups in an orderly fashion. And look at that. I've mixed my class into new groups. Students have new people to participate with. They get to meet more classmates, and we keep building community and having interesting conversations in our classes. Now, when you form students into new groups to do things like check their homework or do an activity, I think it's often a mistake to ask them to get straight to work. It's good if you can give them a chance to warm up to one another by giving them some icebreaker questions. You can ask questions that are completely focused on building community, like through conversation, find 3 special things that you all have in common. Or you can ask questions that are related to the language you want students to practice, such as, I don't know, a present perfect question that asks, what's something you've always wanted to try but haven't done yet? And you'll notice this question is also helping students get to know each other. So it's breaking the ice, but it's also working on some grammar that we will be talking about in today's class. Now, when I have students working in groups, I often like to give them time to check the homework together. But I need to remember that people need routines for doing that well too. So I can provide useful language for checking work in groups, such as I agree, I have the same answer, I have a different answer. Can you explain that? And let's check the book. And I like that last one because I think sometimes students forget that they can probably find the answer together and they don't need to go to the internet. They don't need to translate things. They can use the kind of supported resources we have, like the book, if you're using a book in your class. We can also use various means to check homework. It doesn't always have to be the same thing. So sometimes maybe we check homework as a class. Sometimes we have those group discussions. Or maybe we have teams write their answers on the board for some exercises. Sometimes I like to turn the homework into a review quiz where I tell everyone to close the book and I give them the same exercise again, maybe on the board or through the projector, and I ask them to write their answers to something they did for homework just to see if they can remember and do it again. It's a good kind of struggle that helps them build their connections and increase their learning. All right, and when we finish a session, routines can help us continue the learning. We can reinforce effective behaviors by appreciating students' hard work. And we can spare time to make sure students understand what they are to do for homework and where they can get help. For instance, in my case, you can all reach me at my email at Saddleback College. And we can also ask students to submit an exit ticket, such as a piece of paper on which they write one thing they will remember from today and one thing they have a question about. We can also stimulate students' interest in the next session by posing an intriguing question that will be answered next time. When we establish routines like these throughout our course, we set students up for success. And now that it's time to end our session, we can do the same things. As you can see, we've discussed 4 ways to start courses on the path to engagement and success. We talked about preparing students before the first day, building community, setting expectations, and establishing routines. So for our kind of routine, I mean, I don't know if you have a routine when we have just one session together, but to practice this idea, let's have a closing ticket, an exit ticket, a closing exit ticket for us. So what's one new thing from today's session that you will try in your classes? Please share in the chat.
All right,
And,
everybody. Please
yeah.
go ahead, Chris.
No.
So Chris has shared with us so many great ideas today. Think about everything that we have learned and let us know what's one new thing that you're going to try from today's session in your classes soon. We look forward to hearing your responses. All right, and while we wait for those to come in, Chris, I wanted to share a couple other wonderful comments we've gotten. So Malik says that they really love the idea of including icebreaker questions at the start of group work. They say, I always make my students go right to work, but I understand that might not be the most supportive. So they're going to try this idea of starting out with icebreakers and then have students get to work.
Malik, I'll just share. I'll share. I had the same experience. I often like to get right to work, and I found the students were not really enjoying working together. And I found students kind of sitting to the side and not participating. And I realized that I was falling down on this building community part, and the icebreakers really make a difference. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I think Sarah has a similar comment. She says, I struggle with facilitating group work in my class. And so I really like the ideas you provided, especially sharing useful language they can use within their group. So it sounds like both Malik and Sarah really appreciate those ideas that you shared for routines and see how they might help facilitate better group work in their classes.
I love that, Sarah. Yeah, the useful language can be helpful. And if you're having trouble with groups, another thing to try is assigning students different roles, right? Maybe sometimes one student is a leader and another time someone else is. Someone asks questions, someone takes notes, someone keeps track of the time. Giving students different responsibilities can also help with that group work.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris. And we do have a lot of really fantastic comments coming in from the audience here about what they're taking away from your session. So I'll try to read out as many as we can get through. Let's see, Maria says, I'm going to start the first class with a community building activity. Ahmed says, I'm going to make classroom rules with students instead of imposing them. Carlos said, thank you so much for these great ideas. I'm going to ask students what their favorite rule is next semester. Noah is going to try using that seating chart idea and mix students up into different groups as much as possible. Sophia is taking away the why rules matter idea that we talked about, and they're going to include this discussion before setting expectations in her classes. Let's see, Melina says, I will try the group picture and add it to the wall with names so students can remember each other. Liam is going to try using icebreakers to build community before diving into the content. So that's a great idea. Amira says, I'm going to try all of these. Thank you so much for the practical tips. Priya is going to introduce routines for participation from the first day of the course. Jonas says, I'm going to try revisiting rules mid-course to keep them relevant and fair. David is going to send a welcome message before the first day of the class to welcome students and set the tone. Carlos also shared they're going to start with a reflection exercise on what makes a good learning community. And we'll take two more comments here. Diego says, I will try to update my syllabus and include more clear and simple sentences. And Shahadi says, I will try to use icebreakers at the beginning of each class to help students get to know each other. Thanks so much for those ideas, everybody. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, well, listen, so many great ideas throughout. I just want to recognize that I've learned a lot today. I just made a note. Malia, you had that idea to add the picture to the wall. I think that's a great idea. When you get that class picture, having that in your environment helps build community, this sense that you have a shared space that is special and unique to all of you. I love that. And Jonas, you mentioned revisiting the rules in the middle of the course. I've done that in the past, but I forgot about that idea. And you know what? I'm going to try that in my class. It's just about the right time for me to do that. And I think that's exactly right. Too many great ideas. Thank you, everybody. I've had a really great time. I appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks, Elena.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris, for being here and demonstrating such helpful techniques for starting a course in ways that build community, support classroom management, and promote student autonomy.